Rockford. Welcome to my kitchen cave.
Kasha to Sasha.
Hey everyone, it's Sasha Marx here, Senior Culinary Editor at Serious Eats, and as you can see, I am at home, like most everyone these days. We are cooking from home, and everyone on the culinary team is doing all their recipe development and now video from home. So we're gonna give this a shot, and today I'm making my Mapo-Style white beans. This is a dish that I came up with as a way of using up a big pot of beans. A lot of people right now are stocking up on dried beans. Cooking a big pot of beans, sometimes I find myself wondering, like, what am I gonna do with all of these cooked beans? And so I developed a few recipes that are all up on Serious Eats right now. And one of them is taking cooked white beans and treating them like tofu for Sichuanese style Mapo tofu. Mapo tofu is a really delicious, spicy, numbing braised dish from Sichuan in China. And in this case, I'm subbing out that tofu and using white beans instead. And it's a really quick, satisfying dish that comes together in 10-15 minutes, provided you have a batch of cooked beans to work with. And it's a really great way to use up some cooked beans. And yeah, that's what we're gonna make today. Let's get started. So the stars of this dish, really, beyond the cooked white beans, are the sort of aromatics that come into play that provide a ton of punch and funk to this dish. And I'd say the main component for that is doubanjiang, which is a Sichuanese chili bean paste that's fermented. And it's salty, it's funky, and it's got a lot of heat to it. It's really, really delicious. And that's sort of the base of heat and flavor for the dish, along with some ground dried chilies that go into the mix. They're not blow the roof off hot in the way that something like, I don't know, cayenne would be. These are more fruity, mellow heat. So if you've ever had Sichuanese chili oil, they're usually made with these chilies, and you're not trying to burn the top of your mouth off every time with those. So if you can't find these, a substitute that would work would be something, a dried chili flake on the fruitier side, something like Korean gochugaru would work. But yeah, you don't want something that's super, super hot if you can't find these. But you can find these online or in Chinese markets. The last bit of heat for the dish gets added at the very, very end, and these are Sichuan peppercorns. If you've ever had Sichuanese food, you're probably familiar with the term mala, which is the sort of the hot and numbing sensation that is in some, but not all, Sichuanese dishes. Sichuan peppercorns are not actually a pepper, it's the husk, dried husk of a sort of fruit in the citrus family. They're really tasty, and when ground up, they give a sort of floral, numbing sensation when you eat them. They're really, really tasty. So there's that, and we have some garlic and ginger, which provides sort of floral allium aromatics. And also for this dish, some either scallions, or in this case, we're in the middle of spring here in New York, and I found these really nice ramps at the farmer's market. And you can use ramps instead of scallions or vice versa. They both work great here. Another sort of versatile part of this dish is the meat protein element. So you can use either ground beef or ground pork, whichever you can find. They both work really well. They both make really tasty dish. And that's it, other than the cooked white beans, which are sort of the star of the show. So for this, we have cooked white beans and their cooking liquid. If you've used up your bean cooking liquid for some other dish, or you just don't have a lot of extra, you can use water to sort of finish the stew. So when developing this recipe, I tested using both beans cooked from dry and also canned beans. And for a lot of recipes, you can substitute canned beans for cooked from dry beans, and I do that all the time at home. I understand that, you're not always thinking, a few days out and you have to cook a recipe today. But this recipe, I really tried to make it work with canned beans and could not get it to the a place where I was really happy with it. The cooked from dried beans really has the depth of flavor that you need to stand up to the really strong flavors in the dish with the doubanjiang and the chilies. And when I tried doing it with canned beans, you sort of have this really flavorful liquid and stew, and then you bite into a really bland bean. It just didn't work. So start cooking, I guess. Cool. So to start the dish, gonna get a saucepan, or if you have a wok, on medium-high heat with a tablespoon of oil. And this is just a 1/4 pound of ground beef. So there's really not a lot of meat that goes into this dish. You know, it's sort of, what's really carrying the dish is the beans. But it's a great way to get some meat into your life right now. So once the oil's hot and shimmering, we'll get our beef in. I'm just gonna break it up with a wooden spoon. If you have a metal wok spatula, that works great as well. So normally, if you're cooking meat, I'd say to season this right away with salt and pepper, but there's so much salinity in the doubanjiang that we don't need to add any salt right now. So just get as much as you can into an even layer and break it up into little clumps. And we're just trying to cook this through, get a touch of browning on it. And just sort of scraping up a little bit, you'll sort of notice a bit of fond forming on the bottom of your pan, and that's great. So the meat is cooked through. I'm just going to use a slotted spoon to transfer it to a little bowl. And you want to leave as much of the fat in the pan as possible. Get the pan back on sort of medium-low heat. And we're going to go in with another additional 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Heat it up real quick. You'll see any sort of little bits of meat scraps left. They'll start sizzling. And get the doubanjiang in. Once it's in the pan, it's going to start blooming right away, coloring your oil, and it really smells so good. You get this hit of sort of spicy, funky, salty aroma just coming at you. It's so delicious. So once that's bloomed, we're just going to go in with the ground dried chilies. And again, it's going to quickly color the oil. You're going to get that aroma of sort of floral heat coming at you. Really, really tasty, really pretty. And I'm just gonna take about 2 tablespoons of that, and we're sort of making like a quick little chili oil there that we'll then use to garnish the dish at the end. So this is a nice little way that allows you to control the heat of the dish. You know, if you have people that aren't huge on spicy food, you know, you're allowing them to drizzle on the chili oil at the end and figure out how hot they want their dish to be. And next we're going in with the aromatics, so the garlic and ginger. And we're also going to go in with the bulbs of ramps or scallion whites if you have those. And you're just looking to sweat them a little bit, soften them up. We had Fuchsia Dunlop come into the test kitchen. She did all these amazing Sichuanese cooking videos with us. And one of my favorite ways that she describes things in her recipes, instead of sort of like, you know, throw ginger and garlic in and cook for 30 seconds until it's X color, she's like, throw them in. When it smells amazing, you're good to go to the next step. And it smells really, really great in here, which is super important because my next door neighbors cooked some awful fish for lunch. I guess I shouldn't be this loud, but yeah, it was gross. All right, so get everything sizzling, it's nice, getting soft, delicious, looks great. And now we just go in with the beans. So this is like 2 cups of cooked beans. And so 3/4 of a cup of bean liquid, and then the cooked ground meat. So either beef or pork. And that is pretty much that. So we are gonna bring this up to a simmer and just simmer it for 5 minutes or so, just to make sure that it'll thicken up a little bit. All the flavors will marry, all the ingredients will get happy together in the pan. And that's that. So traditionally this dish, you would also have, along with the doubanjiang, you might have fermented black beans in there, which also provide really nice funk and salinity. Initially, when testing this recipe, I started using fermented black beans as well as the doubanjiang in an attempt to sort of do a like-for-like swap of white beans for silken tofu, and I found that they're not quite the same. Mapo tofu, it's really got a ton of heat and salinity to it, but you've got that nice silky soft tofu that's cutting through the heat and giving you a little reprieve from all those chilies and the saltiness of the fermented black beans and the doubanjiang. The cooked white beans, they don't quite have that sort of heat cutting effect, and they also don't temper salinity in quite the same way. So I found that I needed to tone down the saltiness of the dish, and eliminating the fermented black beans from the recipe allowed me to do that without sacrificing a ton of flavor. It also just made the ingredient list a little more manageable, which is really important right now as we're cooking all in quarantine. So it's been simmering now for 5 minutes or so. It's thickened up nicely. You've got the liquid around there, but it's like a sort of a nice thick stew consistency that we want. And the last aspect of cooking are the greens of the ramps. Again, if you're using scallions, you'd be using the scallion greens at this point. And stir them up, and we're just looking to sort of wilt them down, get them married into the dish, but we're not trying to cook the hell out of them. So yeah, that's it. This is looking good. It's nice and thickened up. I'm just gonna make myself a little bowl here. So traditionally in Mapo tofu, you've got this nice little like raft of chili oil on top, and so it's trying to go for here. And then just a little pinch of the Sichuan peppercorn. It was a super tasty dish, and that took less than 15 minutes to make. If you have made a big pot of beans, it's a great dish to throw together, whether you're like doing a work from home lunch or you need a quick dinner. Great way to use up all those dried beans you stocked up on early in quarantine.